When you control how you respond, no one can manipulate you. This is where true strength begins. Emotional mastery isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending you don't feel pain. It's about owning your reactions so completely that external forces lose their power over your internal peace. This is what separates those who crumble under pressure from those who rise in the face of adversity. Because when your emotions are out of your control, your life is out of your control. But once you learn to regulate your emotions, you reclaim the steering wheel of your life. Every day people are pulled like puppets by others' words, attitudes, and opinions. A single insult can derail an entire week. A small rejection can create self-doubt that lingers for months. That is the danger of giving emotional access to people who don't deserve it. When your emotional state is dependent on how others treat you, you are not free, you are enslaved. People can manipulate you, provoke you, and use your feelings against you. They know what buttons to push, and every time they push them, they watch you break. That's not weakness because you feel. That's weakness because you've never trained yourself to respond rather than react. Emotional mastery is the shield that makes you untouchable. When insults don't penetrate, when silence doesn't shake you, when chaos around you doesn't cause chaos within you, that is true power. People think power is in control over others, but the real power is control over self. It's not about dominance, it's about discipline. It's not about winning arguments, it's about walking away without the need to prove anything. The strongest person in the room isn't the loudest one, it's the one who doesn't flinch when others try to provoke them. That calm, grounded presence, that's what emotional mastery gives you. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you feel fully, but you choose how to express it. You feel the anger, but don't become rage. You feel the sadness, but don't collapse into despair. You feel disappointment, but move forward with wisdom. Emotional mastery means being the observer of your emotions, not the slave to them. You can acknowledge pain without drowning in it. You can recognize disrespect without needing to retaliate. This kind of control doesn't come overnight. It's trained in silence, in solitude, in moments where you could have exploded but chose stillness instead. Once you reach this level, people notice. The ones who used to manipulate you will grow frustrated because you no longer give them what they want. Emotional chaos. They will test you, they will press harder, but you won't move because you are no longer playing their game. You've built your peace from within, and nothing external can shake what's rooted deeply inside you. That's emotional mastery. And that is the ultimate power, not because it controls others, but because it frees you from them, from reaction, from dependence, from weakness. And once you are free, you are finally unstoppable. Silence is often misunderstood. People confuse it with weakness, with submission, with having nothing to say. But silence, when chosen with intention, is one of the most powerful weapons a person can wield. It's not the silence of fear, it's the silence of control. It's the calm in the eye of the storm, the pause that disarms chaos. When emotions run high, when tension fills the room, it is not the loudest voice that wins. It's the one who holds their ground without being shaken. The ability to respond with calm instead of chaos makes you unstoppable, especially in conflict, because silence carries a weight that noise can never match. When you're silent, you're observing, you're calculating. You're not wasting energy reacting, you're preserving your power. Most people speak just to be heard. They react because they feel attacked, triggered, or misunderstood. But those who understand the strength of silence know that they don't need to prove anything. They don't need to defend themselves against every accusation, every insult, every attempt to provoke. Instead, they let their stillness speak louder than words ever could. Silence creates discomfort for those who thrive on drama. It removes the fuel from their fire, and in that absence, they reveal more about themselves than you ever need to. In conflict, silence isn't retreat, it's strategy. When you pause before responding, you shift the dynamic. You no longer react from emotion, you respond from clarity. That pause allows you to observe not just the other person's words, but their intention, their weakness, their emotional instability. It puts you in control. And control isn't about dominance, it's about direction. When you're calm, you dictate the tone. You refuse to be pulled into emotional turbulence. You keep your energy intact while others exhaust themselves trying to provoke a reaction. Some people fear silence because it forces them to sit with themselves. But when you're comfortable in your own presence, silence becomes a sanctuary. In a world addicted to noise, the one who remains quiet holds the most power. Silence demands attention. It draws people in. It makes them wonder what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and why you're not reacting like they expected. That mystery is power. That unpredictability is strength. It keeps you untouchable because no one can read you, control you, or use your emotions against you. You don't have to respond to every insult. You don't have to engage every battle. Not every opinion deserves your voice, and not every conflict deserves your energy. Your silence, when chosen wisely, protects your peace and elevates your presence. It's not about being passive, it's about being precise. It's about knowing when to speak and when to let silence say everything. The loudest response isn't always the most powerful. Sometimes, the strongest move is no move at all. Silence doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've outgrown the need to prove you've won. That's the kind of strength that can't be shaken, manipulated, or broken. That's why silence isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. And when you master it, you become unstoppable. Emotional triggers are like invisible strings that others can pull to manipulate your behavior, your mood, and your decisions. They're the soft spots in your psyche, wounds that haven't fully healed, insecurities you haven't faced, fears that still live under the surface. And if you don't learn to recognize and disarm them, they become weapons in the hands of anyone who wants to control you. But here's the truth. Emotional triggers only have power if you give them power. Those in chains unless you refuse to break them. Learning to disarm your emotional triggers is how you take that power back. And when you do, no one can use your own emotions against you ever again. The most dangerous part of emotional triggers is that they often operate without your awareness. Someone says something seemingly harmless and you suddenly feel anger, shame, sadness, or panic. You may not even understand why it hurts so much, it just does. That's because the trigger is connected to something deeper. A memory, a betrayal, a moment from the past where you felt powerless, rejected, or not good enough. And when someone intentionally or unintentionally touches that nerve, your body reacts before your mind catches up. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix. If you don't take the time to identify your triggers, you'll live your life in a constant state of emotional reaction. You'll snap at people who don't deserve it. You'll fall into patterns that sabotage your growth. Worse, people who understand your weak spots will use them to control you. They'll know how to make you doubt yourself. They'll know what words to use to keep you small, insecure, and emotionally dependent. And every time you react, you give them control. But once you do the work, once you dig into your own emotional responses, reflect on your past, and heal the wounds that caused them, you become immune to manipulation. The same words that used to send you into a spiral now bounce off you like rubber bullets. The same tactics that once made you feel worthless now only reveal the insecurity of the person using them. Because you've disarmed the weapon, you've taken away their access to your inner world. This kind of self-awareness doesn't come from pretending triggers don't exist. It comes from confronting them. When you feel a strong emotional reaction, ask yourself, what is this really about? Where is this coming from? What story am I telling myself that gives this person the power to affect me? The answers won't always come quickly, but over time, you'll see the patterns, and once you see them, you can break them. No one should have the power to control your peace, your confidence, or your self-worth. When you master your triggers, you reclaim that power. You become emotionally untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because you're no longer ruled by unconscious wounds. You respond with clarity instead of reacting with pain. And in doing so, you step into a version of yourself that no longer fears manipulation, because there's nothing left inside you for them to weaponize. The power of internal validation is one of the most liberating forces a person can possess. When you no longer need approval from others to feel worthy, you become immune to rejection, criticism, and manipulation. You stop living for applause and start living for purpose. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but once it does, it changes everything. You no longer chase compliments to feel good about yourself. You no longer fear judgment because your value isn't up for debate. You know who you are, and that knowledge becomes your armor. From a young age, many of us are conditioned to seek external approval. We're praised when we perform well and criticized when we fall short. Over time, this praise-reward system wires our self-worth to the opinions of others. We start living not for ourselves, but for acceptance. Our identity becomes fragile, constantly shaped by how others see us. But here's the danger. When your sense of self depends on external validation, you give away your power. You let strangers dictate how you feel, you become a prisoner to their praise and a victim of their rejection. Internal validation breaks that cycle. It's the ability to affirm yourself without needing anyone else to do it for you. It means looking in the mirror and saying, I am enough, even when the world says otherwise. It means staying grounded in your truth when others misunderstand you. It means recognizing your own growth even if no one claps for it. This kind of self-trust is rare, but once it's built, it becomes unshakable. Because when your worth comes from within, no one can take it from you. Criticism loses its sting when you're not seeking validation in the first place. You can receive feedback without falling apart. You can hear someone's opinion without questioning your value. Even rejection, which once felt like a dagger, becomes just another redirection. When you no longer crave approval, rejection becomes information, not devastation. You begin to understand that not everyone will like you, and that's perfectly okay. Their opinion doesn't change your reality. It doesn't touch your core, because your core is built on your own understanding of who you are. Living from internal validation gives you freedom. You make decisions based on your values, not others' expectations. You speak your truth without censoring yourself for the comfort of others. You walk into rooms without needing to be liked, and that very confidence is what earns respect. Ironically, when you stop needing approval, people begin to give it more freely. Why? Because self-assurance is magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't beg for validation but instead radiate it from within. Internal validation isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It's knowing your strengths, owning your flaws, and not needing anyone else to co-sign your worth. It's the foundation of real self-love, the kind that doesn't crumble under pressure. And in a world that's constantly trying to define you, internal validation is your way of saying, I already know who I am. That is power, quiet, steady, and unbreakable. Reaction is slavery, response is freedom. This simple truth separates those who are controlled by life from those who command it. Every day you are faced with moments that challenge your patience, test your values, and provoke your emotions. And in those moments you have two choices: react impulsively or respond consciously. The first enslaves you to your emotions, while the second empowers you with clarity and control. Reaction is the knee-jerk impulse that comes from unexamined emotion. It's raw, fast, and often regrettable. It happens when your buttons are pushed and your wounds are exposed. You lash out, you withdraw, you say things you don't mean, or you make decisions you can't take back. Reactions are driven by fear, anger, insecurity, or ego. They arise not from strength, but from survival. And the more you live in reaction, the more predictable and controllable you become. Anyone who knows your triggers can manipulate your behavior. Anyone who can provoke you owns you. On the other hand, response is born from self-awareness. It's a deliberate action, not a reflex. It means pausing, breathing, thinking, then choosing how to move forward. Response takes discipline. It takes strength to feel deeply without being consumed, to experience anger without becoming rage, to feel sadness without falling apart. When you respond instead of react, you create space between the stimulus and your decision, and in that space lies your freedom. That space is where you take your power back. Self-awareness is the foundation of this transformation. You cannot respond with clarity if you don't know yourself, your triggers, your wounds, your emotional patterns. When you begin to observe yourself in the heat of the moment, you gain insight into your own mind. You notice what provokes you, what makes you tense, what stories you tell yourself when you feel threatened. With that awareness, you no longer act out of habit, you begin to act with purpose. Control is not about suppressing your emotions, it's about mastering them. You can still feel everything fully: pain, disappointment, even rage, but you don't let those emotions hijack your actions. You own them instead of letting them own you. This is not weakness, this is power in its purest form. Because the person who can stay calm in chaos is the person who leads. The person who can stand in the fire without burning is the one others look to when everything falls apart. Responding, not reacting, doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean letting things slide or avoiding confrontation. It means choosing the most effective way to act, not the most emotional one. It means protecting your peace, your integrity, and your future, even when it would feel good to explode in the moment. It's about staying true to who you are. When you master this skill, you become untouchable. People will try to trigger you, push you, provoke you, but you won't flinch. not because you're numb, but because you're in control. And that control is where your true power begins. Reaction is slavery. Response is freedom. Choose freedom every time. Emotional independence is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. It's the ability to stand firm in your own emotional center without being swept away by the storms around you. When you are emotionally independent, you are no longer hijacked by your feelings, no longer tossed about by other people's moods or opinions. This freedom creates mental clarity, the kind that allows you to see situations and people exactly as they are, without the distortion of fear, desire, or bias. Most people live under the influence of their emotions without even realizing it. When something happens, a harsh word, a disappointment, a conflict, their feelings take over. Their thoughts cloud with anger, sadness, or anxiety, and suddenly the reality of the situation becomes blurred. They see enemies where there are none, threats where there are none, and problems far bigger than they really are. Emotional hijacking distorts judgment because it prioritizes survival over truth. In that state, decisions are made based on pain or fear, not reason or wisdom. But when you cultivate emotional independence, you refuse to be a passenger on the roller coaster of your feelings. You recognize the emotions as signals, not facts. You observe them with curiosity rather than being consumed by them. That observation creates distance, and distance brings clarity. Instead of reacting to every emotional trigger, you step back and assess the situation with a clear mind. You see the true motives of people, the real consequences of events, and the best course of action for yourself. This clarity is the foundation for wise choices and effective action. Mental clarity from emotional independence also means you are less likely to project your fears or desires onto others. When emotions control you, it's easy to assume others have bad intentions or that situations will end badly because you're afraid or insecure. But with emotional independence, you can separate your internal world from the external one. You understand that someone's harsh words may have nothing to do with you, or that a difficult situation may be temporary and solvable. This insight prevents unnecessary conflict and helps you maintain healthier relationships. Furthermore, emotional independence protects your peace. When you are no longer tied to the approval or judgment of others, you don't lose your calm when faced with criticism or rejection. You don't spiral into self-doubt when things don't go your way. Your emotions don't control your self-worth. That kind of mental clarity allows you to focus on what truly matters: your goals, your values, and your growth. You don't waste energy on distractions or false narratives because you see through them clearly. This clarity isn't something you gain overnight. It requires practice, patience, and self-awareness. It means training yourself to notice when emotions rise and choosing not to act on impulse. It means reflecting on your feelings to understand what's underneath them. It means accepting that not every emotional wave needs to dictate your reality. Over time, this practice rewires your mind and heart. You become someone who responds calmly, thinks strategically, and acts with purpose. When emotional independence leads to mental clarity, you live a life of freedom and truth. You navigate challenges with calm confidence and build connections based on understanding rather than reaction. You become the master of your inner world, and in doing so, you unlock the power to shape your outer world. The journey to emotional independence and mastery is not always easy, but it is undeniably worth every effort. When you learn to control your responses, disarm your triggers, embrace silence as strength, and validate yourself from within, you step into a power that no one can take away. This power grants you mental clarity, frees you from the chaos of emotional hijacking, and allows you to see the world and yourself with unshakable truth. True freedom comes not from controlling others, but from mastering your own inner world. And once you claim that